We have 3 remaining. In the final week of, let's see, the middle week of August 8th, 9th, and 10th, we're going to Yuma County, La Paz County, and Mojave County. This week we're doing listening sessions for covered populations, and also a listening session for anyone across the state who wants to join a community call. And I can put these, I can put links to the Eventbrite registration in the chat. I'm going to do that right now. So anybody is welcome to attend these. And, you know, with the covered populations that we're doing are veterans, older adults, people with disabilities, and people, incarcerated individuals, either formerly or existing. So what we're looking for is lived experience, people that'll show up and tell us what they're going through in terms of trying to get and stay on the internet. And yeah, so it should be interesting. They're going to break into small groups like they have in the in-person listening sessions, and they really get in close. They have an hour and a half each, and they get in close with dialogue between the facilitator and the people that show up for the meeting. So they've been very effective. And then let me see. I've also got a link to the login for the county ones that I just mentioned, Yuma, La Paz, and Mojave. That's the link I just dropped in there. Many of you have been attending the monthly community table conversations. These are intended to be like office hours with the broadband office around the digital equity planning. And those are on the same page as the signups for the community sessions. So you've got all the links.
Was that last one recorded?
The table meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, it was, and it's already on the website.
Okay.
Yep, so you can find it there. And that is about all. Everything, you know, everything's just proceeding apace. DEI is gathering their data and you know, proceeding as quickly as they can on pulling the digital equity plan together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions? So Cindy, I mean, I know you've been getting a lot of information, but have you been hearing any kind of really new things that we haven't really discussed before?
You mean out of the sessions?
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron's very, very guarded about talking about anything that ahead of all of the data being collected. The data set is from the listening sessions and also the surveys. So they really don't want to talk ahead of time about what they're uncovering, because they want to have a very accurate picture. So that's kind of the standard line at the moment. Okay. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and jump into the presentation today. Glad to welcome Derek Masseth, who many of you know is the executive director of the Sun Corridor Network. Excuse me. And he's been a busy boy, so to speak, in that the Sun Corridor Network is kind of growing by leaps and bounds.
No, if you need an additional information.
Craig, you need to mute. Thank you.
Like I said, I'm trying to finish by the 7th of August, which is when the Mountain Connect
Craig, you need
broadband
to
conference
starts. Mute you here. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. So anyway, as I was saying, that the Sun Corridor Network, particularly since Derek has become full-time executive director, has really been reaching out to communities and school districts and so forth And so it's very exciting to see what's going on with the Sun Corridor Network from the days when we had our task force and suggested that we needed to have a strategic plan. So anyway, Derek, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you want to share?
No, Steve. And as I thought about kind of coming into today, maybe I do need to put a 30-minute, PowerPoint deck together or something like that. I didn't do that for today.
Okay.
But yeah, we have been pretty darn busy. So, and I know Sandeep was here last week. I had hoped to be here with him because some of what I might talk about, he may have spoken about last week, particularly when with respect to the middle mile ecosystem and the operations and management. Did he cover that RFP at all?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Well,
Derek, can
yeah.
you kind of back up for a second? Because we do have a lot of new people who may not even know what Sun Corridor is, how you came about, and kind of where you're going and that sort of stuff. So could you take a couple of minutes to do that, please?
Yes, of course. So I'm Derek Masseth. I'm the executive director of the Sun Corridor Network, and we are Arizona's research and education network. Founded 10 years ago. We're in our 10th year anniversary. By the state's universities. So that's Arizona State University, University of Arizona, and Northern Arizona University came together to create a network between themselves and connecting the state's universities to the national R&E ecosystem and fiber backplane known as the Internet 2. And throughout the course of the last 10 years, then we've been gradually kind of expanding that mission into K-12s and libraries and community colleges, and then during the pandemic, really got engaged in helping students connect wherever they might happen to be, whether it was a fast food joint, the parking lot of a school or a library, or in their home, and so was certainly early on a very active participant on this call. In recent months, haven't been able to make it much on Monday afternoons, but is that good in terms of background, Steve?
Yeah, I think so, Derek. So Derek, and maybe you'll get into this a little bit later, but if you can also share with people, so how do you, with all the new stuff that you're kind of getting into, how do people connect with you? How do they take advantage of your services and so forth?
So, I mean, connecting with us is often as simple as writing me an email or reaching out on our contact us page on our website, and then brainstorming how we might help or how we might engage is effectively a collaborative brainstorming session. And we do things, we see ourselves as public sector focused broadband experts, right? So we build and operate networks. We build and operate some of the fastest networks, I'll suggest, in the state, serving the two largest education enterprises in the state of Arizona, right? So we know a little thing or two about building and managing networks, and we're really just here to help, right? So we can help advise communities as to how to enter and participate in broadband ecosystems, all the way up to and including we might actually build and manage a network for a community or a city or a county, and literally everything in between. So if somebody wants internet service and they're in the public sector, we're happy to quote services. If somebody just wants advice in terms of how how to think about the broadband ecosystem, whether they're a city or a county or a not-for-profit organization, we're happy to help. And most of our interactions start from a meeting like this, or a cold email introduction. So Does that help,
Okay.
Steve?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. Howard. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead,
I had some questions, but maybe you'll cover them. So I'll let you go and then see where we are afterwards.
I mean, it might be a great place to start just with your questions, Steve, because I struggled with kind of where to even start in terms of an update. If Sandeep talked about middle mile, then I won't. That's really a Commerce Authority initiative that we advise on, and will be an active participant in once the network is live. But if he talked about it, I don't need to. In the last 6 months, I'll say that it was E-rate season, right? And we had a pretty run-of-the-mill E-rate season in terms of expansion. We took on somewhere between 8 and 10, new sites, which is, growth, but slow growth when you think about the number of sites that exist. And we've had.
What kind of sites are those?
Oh, we took a collection of the basis charter schools. A number of them came on. More of the school, the Arizona State School for the deaf and blind. And I could give you a list, but I don't have
That's
it.
fine. Just trying to get a sense of whether, of what kinds of folks.
Yeah, I would say mostly charters, and I think 5 of the wins were basis in particular. And we're working with, as you might imagine, given our connection to the universities, the ASU Prep Academy, as they've traditionally been embedded in ASU campuses. Well, they're beginning to establish more brick and mortar presence outside of ASU campuses. We're helping them to do that through the E-rate ecosystem. And I'll just say, we've talked about it before on this call. We continue to kind of grapple with whether or not Arizona's Research and Education Network should continue to be fundamentally a provider in the E-rate parlance, or if we should consider, more kind of statewide consortial kinds of activity that really just changes the business model in terms of how we get to schools. But anyway, something that we're considering yet again. Maybe we'll consider it every year for a while. I don't know, but
so related to that is the discussion about you guys becoming a 501c3.
I don't know if the two necessarily have to interact, but certainly that is also a conversation that has been ongoing. It is at the moment stalled. There's not any movement on that front. At this moment, the universities are pretty happy exactly where we are, doing exactly what we're doing, and so not particularly keen to advance a 501c3 in support of Sun Corridor's efforts at this point. It's not to say it won't come back, but that's not a conversation that's moving forward at the moment. Did you have other questions, Steve? Yeah.
Well, I guess related to that is, I believe you've been working on a strategic plan, or you've completed a strategic plan. Where is that, and kind of where do you see Sun Corridor being in the next couple of years? And of course, related to that is your plans for BEAD funding and digital equity funding and all that kind of good stuff.
Those are pretty deep conversations, right? So I've spoken to this group before about some of the work we've done in places like Page and Yuma and Hat Ranch, where we've built networks that are kind of multi-purpose, right? These are sites where our university partners have an interest in in building building networks to collect data, whether it's environmental sensor data, or heck, in some cases we're talking about, you know, managing and monitoring herds of livestock, right, with CBRS networks of all things. Well, these tend to be places where they're pretty difficult to get residential connectivity to as well. So we tend to try to think about these networks as multi-purpose, where if we're there to collect data about horses or cows, you know, maybe we could connect the students in their homes as well. And that's the kind of work we're doing in Page and Hat Ranch in particular. Hat Ranch is out in the shadow of Mount Williams in northeastern Arizona, just for frame of reference, where we do some wildfire monitoring, and because we're there, we can do some digital equity networking as well. And we're right on the verge of, in fact, we have some funding. We're right on the verge of announcing that we have all of the funding required to build the collaborative network that we've been talking about in Yuma for a while, which would be, again, a research network that can be dual purposed or multi-purposed in terms of smart city sensor net kind of activity. The reason we're at our core, the reason we're doing it is to build a STEM education data acquisition and retention network in support of the high schools, of a collaboration we've built between the high schools, the community college, and the University of Arizona's experimental farms down in Yuma. And again, because we're there, we can expand that network as needed or as desired to you know, to do some digital equity work, or at least some last mile broadband if applicable. And then in support of research networks, the kind of the entirely other end of the sphere, the University of Arizona and Arizona State University have both announced fairly substantial fairly substantial quantum networking laboratories. Two of the most prominent researchers in that space in the country are at each of the two universities, and they seek to establish a collaborative network that spans the entire state. And this is not networking for quantum computing. This is actually quantum networking. So at the completely other end of the spectrum of kind of hard to do but really interesting network things is this quantum collaborative, where we're trying to take dark fiber and connect these two quantum networks. And then the other, probably the biggest thing we've been up to recently is the Maricopa County grant that we got funded late last year, which is a multi-part set of efforts where a collection of the dollars is set aside for digital equity work with our partner, the Digital Equity Institute, Aaron Carr Jordan, who many on this call know. And Sun Corridor Network is handling a collection of in fact, all of the broadband efforts under that grant. And they amount to fundamentally building a middle mile ecosystem that connects community anchor institutions, from which we will be deploying to and through networks into some of the most disadvantaged and or hard to reach neighborhoods in Maricopa County. If you know Maricopa County, you know that is predominantly, Metro Phoenix, but not exclusively. So we've been hard at work planning for, and in at least a couple of cases already building networks. It's exciting to note that in support, in particular, of that grant, because it's $34 million total dollars, again divvied up between mapping, digital equity, and broadband. But we've added 4 new full-time staff and a warehouse and set of offices dedicated to Sun Corridor Network. So those things are exciting as well, and a lot of what we've been working on in the last 6 months or so.
Okay.
There's so much more, but I'll stop there.
Well, we want to hear it all.
Well, it's just detail. Like there's a lot of detail under all of that, as you might imagine.
So Derek, what, if anything, are you doing with the Final Mile project? Is that something you're engaged with or not? Or?
Well, what's interesting is no, we're not, and we probably should be. We work though, so our county grant program issued an RFP fairly early on to identify partners, and I'm comforted to see, I don't know when he joined, maybe just recently, but Rory Conaway at Triad Wireless is one of our primary partners, if not the primary partner, on the last mile segments of what we're doing in the Metro Phoenix area. And as you all know, he's the prime partner on the final mile as well, because what we're doing under the Maricopa grant is very, very similar to the final mile efforts out in rural, because that was rural schools predominantly. And so anyway, Rory's in the middle of both projects, just to be clear.
Okay. And we do hear from Rory fairly frequently, but Rory, you can get a chance in just a couple minutes if you want to add anything else.
I don't know how much I'm supposed to say. I don't have an NDA yet. There's still some contracts being worked out, so we have
Right.
to, but the bottom line is, I guess we'll have the first one. Derek loaned us one of his engineers today, and our guys were working together, and they're about 80% ready to start lighting the tower up tomorrow. So, we'll see how that goes.
That's at Capri Mobile Home Park in kind of the heart of.
Yeah, that was okay. So apparently that's out. All right. Yeah.
I think I can share, Rory.
Okay. All right. If you approve it, Derek, you're the man. So, yeah, we should be lit up tomorrow, or worst case Wednesday. We have a guy over there now doing some stuff, and they've almost got all the network stuff worked out, and Andrew's coordinating us with the high gain and on the back end on the network stuff. So yeah, we should be ready to rock and roll here shortly.
Yep.
So Derek, going back to some of my earlier questions, that when we were talking about Sun Corridor Network, a couple of years ago, I think there seemed to be a lot of interest in seeing Sun Corridor become a true education, libraries, and even telehealth or telemedicine network. Is that something that's still on the agenda? Is that consistent with what you're now doing, or what's your thought about that?
Oh, that's complex, Steve. So
hey, I don't want to make this easy for you.
And I mean, Karina's on the call, so she may have thoughts here as well. But this is so the way that we currently interact with E-rate, and that is like, if you're a school and a library and you're not using E-rate, you probably should, right? Especially to get your ISP. And the way that we currently interact with schools and libraries in order to get them on our network is we have to compete for their business under the E-rate, parlance. And we do that, and we win some and we lose some, but that's just the way that it works, right? And the other option, I would say, for the state of Arizona to consider would be a consortium model, or some model that got support from the state, either through the Department of Education or directly with a legislative allocation that said, we believe so strongly in the value of a statewide education network that we're gonna put some sort of skin or some sort of policy teeth behind some effort. I will just say that Arizona has not traditionally been friendly to those kinds of ideas, and so we continue seeking to bring schools on net, through the lens of the prescribed business model. I think, there's always opportunities to think differently, or maybe to put different ideas into different ecosystems. But at the moment, Steve, we, Sun Corridor Network, are kind of just operating inside of the ecosystem as generally prescribed, and haven't kind of pushed against those forces, I guess, in recent years. And maybe now's the time. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe I should say, Derek, if you want to reopen those conversations, I would be more than happy, because it's also like about 1.5 years already since we met last time, because it was with Beth, and she was brand new in
That's right.
ADE, right?
Right.
So she's already been with us for 1.5 years. We have done a lot of movement in this space, and might be an opportunity to revisit that conversation. We were talking about maybe exploring doing some focus groups or surveying, or exploring how K-12 will feel about a consortium, and creating some movement, and eventually, if needed, take it to legislation. But we need to have some data to support that.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Let me know if we want to regather. Yeah.
I think I would be delighted to do that. And when the time is right, the time will be right. And so
yeah.
Yeah,
but we're here
I'll
to
reach
support. I'll be more than happy to support on that.
Okay.
So Derek,
fantastic.
I'm sorry. So to go back to a couple of the other questions that I asked earlier about BEAD and BEAD funding, and whether or not there's some opportunity there to do exactly what we were just talking about. And again, there's the intersection of Final Mile, your projects in Phoenix, and all these different pieces of things. And it seems to me, I don't know that we've ever, I mean, I know most of your funding, except for these projects now, has come through the 3 universities, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
But at least that I'm not aware of, that there hasn't been an official request to the legislature saying we want to create this network and we need some funding to do that. Is that an assumption, or?
That is an accurate statement. Absolutely. There's never been a formal legislative budget request. So
it seems to me that now, with all the stuff that's happening, that would be an appropriate time to have that discussion. That's my own opinion.
It very well could be. And with the BEAD dollars, there could be some interesting opportunities in there.
So it seems to me, if you haven't had that conversation with Sandeep, I mean, I know you work and collaborate a lot with Sandeep, but it seems to me that would be an important discussion at this stage.
Yep, we agree.
and there's Karina saying, "Oh, well, we should do this." So
yeah,
at least 3 of us agree, right?
It's fabulous. And so, I mean, I think that Commerce has a difficult job in front of them to put a program together that, $993 million is a lot of money.
Yep.
But I don't know anyone who thinks it's enough to get to every unconnected household in Arizona, right? So he's got a lot on his plate, and a lot to think about, and certainly we're happy to encourage him to think in particular ways about community anchors, and happy to have as much support from folks like you all as possible in those talking points.
Well, and as you know, that there's some key players with Mylan and Mala and so forth in the E-rate space And so again, all those pieces, in my opinion, all seem to come together, and now might be a good time to help further leverage that BEAD funding. I don't know if it's applicable or not. Mark, you probably know that better than I do about whether BEAD funding could possibly somehow support the Sun Corridor network and so forth. So I'm just throwing that out there for.
It's our read of it, and I'd love Mark's, but our read of it suggests that it's kind of up to the discretion of the state broadband office. There is, some wiggle room for community anchors inside of the DC legislation, but only after you've gotten a certain amount of last mile impact accomplished is kind of generally what our read of it has been.
Yeah, mine is similar, but it may be that CAIs can't be served until you're close to completely reaching the unserved and underserved. They're a third priority in that
Right.
equation. So
Yeah,
limited opportunity there probably.
probably.
But that doesn't mean they can't benefit from last mile being deployed in their community with associated middle mile connectivity that will often bring middle mile or last mile within reach of them, even if it doesn't fund it specifically to their point of demarcation. It may get it right in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation, right? Because you don't have a community anchor without a community. And so if last mile is getting to the community that's un and underserved, it's going to at least be within half a mile of the anchor in most cases. And so arguably, if last mile gets to where it needs to go, anchors are, very nearby at minimum, if not on net, because they're close, right? So anyway.
Yeah, maybe better than a half mile, because generally you're going to
Right.
do
Right.
your laterals that pass every home, and it's the last 100 feet or 100 yards
Right.
that, so
Absolutely.
I think CAIs will benefit from the fiber to the home that's deployed under BEAD, if not directly getting their connections funded.
Right. You're right. Yeah, well said, Mark.
So Derek, obviously one of the other projects which you've already mentioned that you're involved with is the highways project. And so do you see any further role with Sun Corridor regarding once those networks are built? Or is that going to be mostly open to the private sector, or what's your take on that?
Well, the state's commitment to giving us, exclusive access to 144 strands of fiber has remained pretty solid throughout the course of all of this. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll be very engaged in the go forward network. So I presume Sandeep talked about the OMC RFP last week and the fact that it was awarded, but the contract negotiations are underway. So there's a fair amount that is not yet ready for, public consumption, but it's close, right? And kind of depending on how those negotiations go, we may or may not have a role in helping to take care of the network itself. We're certainly open and flexible. But we'll have fiber that we can use to serve schools, and we will use to serve universities and colleges and our existing K-12 customers along the interstate system. So we'll be very much involved. It just depends.
Derek, Mark
Yep.
again, though, isn't it the case that out of the 993 million, some may be applied to the KPMG middle mile strategy
Yes.
for additional highway infrastructure, with the balance, of course, being competitive grants. But isn't that the next big opportunity, how Commerce decides to split that pie?
I think it is, yeah. And it, for their part, I think the well, I guess broadly speaking, the idea would be if, you know, if middle mile is needed to get sufficient capacity to finish the last mile, then, you know, you can use BEAD money to do that. And so, yes, I think there's certainly an opportunity in some parts of Arizona to advance the interstate middle mile with BEAD dollars.
Well, again, Derek, for me, that it seems that the collaboration is going to be really critical for us, as you indicated, that even with all the BEAD money, it's not end all and be all of what we need. And so the more that we can leverage that money, it seems to me is really critical.
Yep. Nicole did say it really well here.
Yeah.
in the chat.
So actually, I was just going to ask Nicole, based on what you've been hearing, you have any thoughts or additions or comments?
Well, you know, we covered a lot of ground there, so I was just really interested in how the conversation was playing out. But I guess I would, you know, I hear a lot of anxiety around the terms priorities. Arizona is required to make a plan to serve all broadband serviceable locations, BSLs, unserved, underserved anchor institutions. It's not an afterthought, it's an all of or nothing effort. So, you know, that's how I like to interpret the priority list. And then of course, the process of creating the sub-grantee selection criteria also looks at different solutions that are needed for these different types of BSLs. I think I also wanted to mention eligible entities that are eligible as subgrantees are pretty wide. So Sun Corridor, other ISPs, nonprofits, LEAs, county governments, tribal governments are all eligible for BEAD funding. So it is going to take a lot of creative partnership, and especially right now, the big puzzle of looking at all these other injections of broadband funding and networks to come, we'll say. So yeah, it's a fun time to be in broadband.
Though Nicole,
Absolutely.
Oops. This is Mark. Though the eligibility for is broad, the requirements for a BEAD applicant are, in my mind, a significant barrier in workforce, letters of credit, and other things for young or smaller companies. There is some inherent disadvantage based on the complexity and requirements that will likely preclude many desirable eligible entities from being able to fully participate. I don't mean to be too critical, but the BEAD, I've been spending lots of time looking at the BEAD requirements, and they are going to be a high bar for that will preclude some eligible entities from being able to practically participate.
You know, Mark, I share this concern, and a lot of FPOs and NTIA employees also share the concern. But right now, that's what the law requires us to do, is having doing what they can to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. And they see the letters of credit and guarantee funds to operate these networks into the future as part of that. I think it reiterates Derek's point about creative partnerships to make sure that we can get this done. And you know, we really have this chance to think creatively about that capacity. So maybe they're not the eligible putting their own credit on the line, but we have a lot of groups, including Sun Corridor and others, who are interested in lifting everybody up.
Yeah,
but
fair
you know, Mark, please don't feel self-conscious about being critical. Like I think it's an important part of my job to make sure that we're representing all these concerns. And certainly we're hearing a lot of criticism or feedback about how this program can get deployed.
Fair enough. No, I welcome the program, but I'm working with parties, some of which are well enabled to meet those criteria, and others of which will struggle or not practically be able. But you're right, partnerships with, may provide the pathway for people who would be eligible but not practical to partner. So good point.
So Derek and Nicole, I guess just to pick up on what my comments earlier and what we were just talking about in terms of partnerships, that perhaps now is the time to, and I know you guys all talk to each other a lot. Nicole, I know you talk to Janet and so forth, but it seems like this is a time to maybe bring folks together and talk about, so what's the future and how does BEAD in particular play into that? And, again, Sun Corridor and Department of Ed and so forth. So it's my 12 cents.
Yep, absolutely. I'd
Yep.
be happy to do a briefing, or, we can have more discussions whenever works for you.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's talk offline about how we can, how's the best way to proceed with that. So any other questions?
Sounds good.
Okay. So Derek, do you have anything else you want to add?
I don't, not today. Just appreciate being back and look forward to seeing you all again. I'm going to drop. I got to run.
Good.
But good to see you all.
Good to see you. Hopefully you can make it every couple of weeks or so.
Yep, hopefully. Talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Derek. So Nicole, now that you're kind of back, do you have anything else you want to add?
Well, just the 5-year action plan is on track to be, I guess, posted publicly the end of August. But the emphasis is now on the state's initial proposal, which is where they're describing their state map challenge process, as well as the subgrantee selection. So I'm going to put a link in the chat to a webinar that NTIA just held last week on participating in the state challenge process. And then we can also expect to see a lot more conversation from the broadband office about how people can participate. The one thing to note is an individual can't challenge the state's map. I can't say, hey, right now I don't have great internet service. Only a local government or a nonprofit entity or tribal government can submit a challenge to the state's broadband availability map challenge process. So we're going to see a lot more information coming from the broadband office soon, but that's sort of where the focus is. The digital equity plan is also on track. We should see a draft for public comment in mid-October of this year. And Cindy shared about the listening sessions that are going on, and the virtual and the last of the in-person ones.
Nicole, actually, could you remind people who you are? I think most
Sure.
people know you, but I think we have a few new people.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm Nicole Umayam. I'm the Federal Program Officer for NTIA, and I administer the program funds for the BEAD and digital equity programs. And I engage with a lot of stakeholders and try to support our decision makers and everybody impacted by these programs.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Any questions for Nicole? Okay.
Nicole, tribal round 2,
Yes.
$1 billion.
End of this week. That's what I'm told.
Thanks.
End of this week.
Excellent.
And we will also see an announcement about the digital equity planning funds for tribal governments end of this week as well. So hang tight.
Okay.
Question, Nicole, what about the digital equity, the other community grant program, I believe, or what is the name of the other one that is pending announcement? Capacity grant, yeah.
The capacity grants, yes. The Digital Equity Act is actually 3 different grant programs under digital equity. One that's a formula grant to states, well, actually two that are formula grants to states, the planning and the capacity grant. And the third is the competitive grant that's available for all sorts of nonprofits, LEAs, different state agencies. States can, if they want to take that on as well. So it's actually three different funds that are available. There was a set aside, there was a $3 million set aside for tribal governments out of the digital equity planning funds, but for a variety of reasons, they had to delay that funding. So they're going to be making the announcement about how they're going to make sure that these planning dollars get to tribal governments the end of this week.
Okay, for the three funding sources, there will be an announcement by the end of this week.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Steve, hi, this is Karen.
Hi, Karen. Oh, good.
Hi, Nicole and Karina. I think Karina's asking about when the announcement will be for the capacity grant program. And Nicole, I think the first thing that has to happen is the Arizona Digital Equity Plan has to be approved, and then sometime next spring, late spring, the capacity formula grant will be awarded to the state. Then the state can make an announcement on like a grant program for subrecipients. Karina, was that your question?
That was exactly my question. I wasn't sure about what was happening at the end of this week then, because I remember you mentioning spring. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much for calling that out.
Yeah, so I think to clarify, what Nicole was referring to is the announcement for the tribal programs, including digital equity. And then Karina, our conversation before was we have to get through the planning process and the approval from NTIA before the state can release an announcement for the capacity grant program.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
So Karen, while you're on, do you have anything else that you want to give us an update regarding the broadband office?
I think everyone's done a really good job. I'm sorry I jumped on late right in the middle of Cindy's update, but I think she has provided the update on the final listening sessions that will be held in Yuma, La Paz, and Mojave County. And then there's some virtual sessions that will be held this week through the Digital Equity Institute. The only thing I think I can add is that the ABDG grant program, we're actually getting contracts back into ACA, so they're being executed. So very excited that those projects are going to start to break ground, hopefully very soon. They still have to go through some engineering, but those projects are very much underway.
Can you explain quickly, Karen, what those grants are?
Sure, Steve. Last year, there was $100 million announced through the Arizona Commerce Authority for the Arizona Broadband Development Grant Program. 75 million of that went to rural Arizona and 25 million went to urban areas. And those funds were awarded last year, but there was a series of approvals and delays that the Arizona had to work through the U.S. Treasury to get the final approvals. So we've gotten all that through, contracts out the door, and now, like I said, the contracts are starting to come back in to get executed. So we're excited, we said, to get those projects off the ground.
I bet you had a lot to do with getting all that stuff worked out. Okay.
I think that's about all I have, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Okay. Any other questions for Karen or Nicole?
I actually have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So hi, Karen and Nicole. So my first question is do you know when the 5-year and the DEA plans are due and when they'll be and when you'll do the comments on that? That's my first question. My second question is when did the state get the planning grant where the clock started, was that just in December of 22?
So I think I'm gonna defer to Nicole on that last question. But I think Nicole touched on the approval process. Right now, the state contracted, or ACA contracted with the Digital Equity Institute to develop the plan, and that's why we're holding all those listening sessions to get the feedback. The draft plan will be open for public comment somewhere mid-October, probably that second week of October. It will be open for 30 days. We'll take all of that feedback, incorporate that into the plan. The plan will be submitted to NTIA by the end of this calendar year, and then NTIA has to, vet that and approve it, for final approval before those capacity grants will be released. So, and Nicole, please feel free to jump in on that.
Yep, that's accurate. The award grant was September 30th of 2022, but the project start date is October 1st of 2022.
And that was for the digital equity, and then the BEAD, sorry, go ahead, Nicole. So to the second part, a lot of the BEAD 5-year plan is due the end of August. And then the initial plan, I believe, is due the end of December. And the final plan is due, I think, 180 days after the approval of the initial plan. Right, Nicole?
Yes. Yes.
Got it. Still trying to get all of these dates like burned into my brain.
Yep, the
Okay,
5-year action plan is August 20th.
Any other questions or comments for Nicole?
Yeah,
or
what was
Kim?
Nicole just saying about the 5-year plan?
The BEAD 5-year action plan is due August 28th. That one does not require a public comment period. There may be some engagement around it, but it'll be posted. And then the end of the year, December 27th, is the initial proposal, which is
So November, so November, and then 30 days after that.
well, the initial proposal deadline it's based around when they got noticed of the funding allocation. So then that ended up being December 27th.
Okay. But the plan itself, so that's based on when we got notice. So these dates are really confusing.
Yes, let me try to type them out as well.
Yeah.
So the project starts for BEAD. The project start date was December 1st. The 5-year action plan is due August 28th of 2023, this year.
Mm-hmm.
The initial proposal is due December 27th of 2023. Then it will take an undetermined amount of time for NTIA to approve the initial proposal. But then the state has 365 days after it's approved to the final proposal. And what that means in real terms is the state runs their subgrant selection process. So they run, they select those project areas and they get bidders for those areas and they submit that list in the final proposal. So that's what they have to do within that 1 year.
Elena, Sandeep has a slide in some of his presentations with that timeline laid out. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, no, I have it, Karen.
Okay.
I just didn't get a chance to look at it, and I wasn't at the meeting last week because I had some dental surgery. But I was just trying to, get like a timeline.
Okay.
So,
Okay, any other questions or comments for Karen or Nicole? Okay, if not, let's move on to, first of all, if he's still on, I'd like to introduce Lance Jones. Lance, you still there?
Yes, I am.
So Lance and I go back, how many years, Lance? Way too many, huh?
Steve, I hate to say it, but it's been over a couple decades now,
Easily.
easily.
You want to introduce yourself real quick, Lance?
Sure. My name is Lance Jones. I'm the Director of Philanthropy at Pima Community College. However, my background's been in IT for numerous decades. I was initially hired by a company called Simply Beds here in town to do grant writing for the USDA broadband stimulus package back in 2009. Basically to do the same thing they're doing now, to bring internet to unserved and underserved areas throughout southern Arizona. So essentially what we did is wrote the grant. We didn't necessarily receive the funding, but we built our network out down from from Tucson all the way down to Nogales. We were a WISP, or wireless internet service provider. So that kind of gives you the gist.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Lance?
I know, it's glad to be here. Glad to see everybody's kind of, making the efforts going forward. It's great to see how, Arizona's just expanding, especially in that that Sun Corridor and those areas, right around that I-10 and I-8 interchange. We need to bring internet obviously throughout the state, especially to the reservations and what have you. So I'm glad we're kind of, putting our best efforts and collaborating, getting this work done.
Hey, great, Lance. Well, thanks for joining us today. Good to
My
see
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Good to hear you anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's jump in. Mala and Aaron, you guys have some things that you want to share with us today?
Erin just had to jump off to another call.
Okay.
So, yeah, I will take this on. I don't know if you saw the press release from FCC on July 20th. They approved the draft order for the notice of rulemaking. This was for changes aimed at encouraging participation by tribal libraries and relaxing the cost allocation requirements. I spoke about this a couple of times in earlier meetings. Basically, what this does is, it still has to be approved for rulemaking, but basically what this means is that the tribal colleges and universities that serve as public libraries in their communities will be allowed to apply for E-rate. So far, the colleges and university libraries cannot apply for E-rate. It's only the public libraries and schools that can apply for E-rate, but here they are granting eligibility to tribal colleges and university libraries that serve the public. They're also granting exemptions to the competitive bidding process, which is great for those that are applying for less than $3,600. Which means that is a good relief for small rural libraries whose internet bills don't go beyond that per year, but they still have to go through the whole process. So now they're granting exemption for those. There is also increase in the floor for category 2. Category 2 is internal connections, and it depends on the square footage of the library or the number of students that the school has. And that was capped at 85%. Now they've increased that to 90%. And also for those libraries that are smaller than 4,000 square feet, the funding floor is 55,000. So that's the minimum that they would get if they were a small rural entity that is applying for category 2. They're also providing guidance on cost allocation to applicants. Cost allocation has been the bane for some of these smaller entities, especially if they're in a shared building. If they are, let's say, on the second floor of a government building, then they have to cost allocate out what the rest of that building is using their internet for. And that's a big pain. But now they have provided some relief, some guidance on cost allocation, though not complete. Okay, whatever internet comes to your door for that building, you're allowed to, you get exemption. No, but there is more reasonable cost allocation, rules and guidelines that are being considered. All this goes towards simplifying E-rate for tribal libraries. There's another suggestion that I had made to FCC, had a series of meetings 2 weeks ago with them, and that was for the Category 2 deadline, having a rolling deadline for Category 2 rather than having the same deadline as Category 1, which meant that when the tribal library or tribal school or a small rural library is ready to apply for Category 2, they can apply rather than wait for the next cycle or be too late for the current cycle. So the FCC staff listened to this, made notes. Hopefully they will consider it for the next 5-year cycle, because this cycle finishes 2025 and the next cycle starts 2026. So hopefully there will be some rule changes for the Category 2 budget at that time. It's a 5-year cycle. Cybersecurity pilot program was proposed by Chairman Rosenwasser. She has proposed, it's only a proposal. I just want us to be aware that there are no rules or guidelines for this yet. And it does need approval, but the proposal is for 3 years, $200 million pilot support for cybersecurity for K-12 schools and public libraries. While that's not a lot of money, there is also consideration for considering cybersecurity to be a part of Category 2 budgets. Since I talked to you about this, that the budgets are capped for each entity, they could use that money for cybersecurity is a proposal. Again, it's a proposal. Hopefully, if adopted, they will open it up to rulemaking, finally making some dent in the cybersecurity war that we've been having with the FCC for so long. The last thing I'd like to report on is telehealth. Okay, Janet is not here today, but Janet and I were at Orlando last week, and we had we were speaking at the U.S. Distance Learning Association conference, and we spoke about our pilot program at Aho and Aravaca, and it was well received. And hopefully, we will have a link to our presentation soon, and I will make sure that all of you get it. Janet and Erin are also hosting a hybrid telehealth event with PCPL branch, Aravaca branch, on Thursday. This is to help to demo the kits, the health kits that we have at those libraries as a part of Health Connect at your library. This is the project name under which we are working on telehealth projects throughout Arizona. Health Connect at your local library. So, and the reason we need to do this is that, it's not enough just to do an event and show the kits that are available and demo what the kids can do, but we need to have an ongoing program at the libraries in order to sustain the interest in telehealth and to make people aware that the equipment is available at the library for them to use to connect to their doctors. And the last event that I'd like to report on is that I had spoken earlier about the liver scan project, the study that we were planning to do for the tribes. And we had the first of this the week of July 4th, and the following week we had another event. These events were at the chapter houses in Navajo County, and they were very successful. We had the first, we had nursing students come to those venues to have to help the patrons with not only doing the vitals, but the nursing staff were there to talk to them about telehealth, about liver health, about nutrition, about how other ailments like diabetes, BMI, and things like that affect the liver health, and to do a preventive care for them rather than just be there and let them know, hey, this is what we're doing. It also helps them understand that the library has these equipment. They can go back to the library, have not the liver scan equipment won't be there at the library, of course. The library will have equipment to help them take their blood pressure, their blood glucose levels, and things like that. And they can connect via the library's broadband to their doctors from the library itself. So it's making them aware of that, making them aware of the digital resources that the library has, the e-resources, the NLM resources. What are the authentic healthcare resources that they can go back to and refer to, things like that. And if they needed a hotspot, so they can connect from home, the libraries give them, loan them the hotspots as well. So just to make them aware of all this, make them aware of ACP, and they can sign up. The event was successful. So any questions anyone has? I know I've talked at length to Craig Settles. I can see that he's there here as well. Any questions from anyone on this?
Amazing stuff.
Thank you.
You and Janet are doing great stuff with this.
And Erin. Erin is taking over the project from me soon, so I can focus on BEAD.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mala. And I don't believe Holly is here today. And I know Janet's not here, but Karina Jones, are you still with us?
Here.
Want to give us any more of an update on what's happening with Department of Ed?
Well, a lot of fun and interesting things. We had the opportunity to go visit Tucson Unified last Thursday, and it was a very nice conversation with a large group of the IT staff that have implemented a lot of policies, procedures, disaster recovery plans after their cybersecurity incident in January this year. Now they are sharing their stories and their experience with the rest of K-12, and they are being very good proponents of preparing K-12 for, this type of incidents that are, it's not a matter of if they will happen, but it's a matter of when they happen, because everybody is exposed right now. So they are doing a great job. We also had the opportunity to present at the ASBO conference in Tucson, and continue to share the word of the work that we are doing on disaster recovery plan and promoting the cybersecurity efforts from the state, including Department of Homeland Security and DEMA, the Department of Emergency and Military Affairs. Different from that, on a different topic, also we are working on robotics. We had a great session last week with Flagstaff Unified and Peoria Unified. They are going to be collaborating with Department of Education on increasing the amount of programs in robotics across the state, and doing some sort of a proof of concept and see how we can eventually advocate for more support and resources for programs like that are helping our students so much. That's what I can think of right now. But yeah, a lot going on, Steve.
Great. Thanks, Karina. Any questions for Karina? Okay. Moving on. So Rory, do you have anything else that you want to add about the final mile? You still there? Yeah, maybe he's gone. Elena, do you have anything that you want to talk about with the Digital Inclusion Network?
No, we had, Aiden had a meeting last week, and Aaron facilitated. We got a lot done. We have chosen a logo. Our website is just about done. We just have some things we want to add, like member logos and things like that. So we're in good shape. We're going to be meeting again in August. If anybody's interested in joining us, please just shoot me an email and I'll add you to the list. We're really kind of focused right now on Digital Inclusion Week. I'm serving on the National NDIA Digital Inclusion Week Committee. So I'm hoping to bring all kinds of ideas and things back to our Arizona Digital Inclusion Network group to share far and wide for people to start planning some events for that week, which is the first week in October, the 2nd through the 6th. That's about it, Steve.
Any questions for Aaron, for Elena? If not, I think we are about done today. Any other announcements that anybody has?
Yes, Steve, Mark here.
Yeah, go
So
ahead, Mark.
I posted early on, we've entered the annual refresh for the Tech Council's state and federal public policy. I reached out this weekend to probably a couple of dozen people, but I also posted in the chat the 10-page excerpt of last year's state and federal policy. Steve Zylstra, the Tech Council president and CEO, did recruit Sandeep specifically to partner with me as co-editor. So Sandeep and I will meet later this week, but there is an open invitation for the next 2 weeks for people to comment or offer markups or specific suggestions. So my ask for you, Steve, is to post that file along with the meeting resources and mention it in your meeting summary as a place for the broader AZBSN community to find it if they're interested.
Yeah, I'll be glad to do that, Mark. And maybe we just need to devote some time, maybe at the next meeting specifically to talk about that and get people's input.
Sure, would appreciate that.
Okay, let's talk offline about that. Okay. Anything else anybody has? If not, I believe we are done for today. Stop sharing. I'm going to stop recording.